D&D number 12, Feed My Sheep, in Jesus' name, chapter 25. It is December 4th, Wednesday morning, Main Street, Pine Forest, Georgia. The morning dawned bright and cold. The night before had started rough, but had ended nicely. The doctor at the hospital was very neat and precise in stitching up Gabe's forehead to cause as little scarring as possible. Before Keegan and Gabe headed home, they stopped to see Jericho in the ICU. Jericho joked with Gabe that he just wanted to have a fancy white headdress too, and now they match. They were happy to hear that Jericho was doing well, and they were going to move him to a step-down unit in the morning. Rose was there and was commanded by Jericho to go home and have dinner with the family. Back at the Tanner home, dinner was later than they'd planned, but Lily and Daisy had whipped up some hors d'oeuvres to hold people over. The dinner was delicious. The company was delightful. Interesting stories were told, and Taylor was allowed to stay the night one more time because she was concerned about Gabe. Gabe's eyes met his father's during the discussion. He wanted to see if his father understood Gabe's and Taylor's need to be together after the early morning talk he'd had with him. It seemed he understood, but he still pulled Gabe aside later and reminded him to be strong. He reminded him that a lot of times good intentions were not enough, and that if they had to be together, allow her to come down to him on the sofa, and for him to not go up to the bedroom. Gabe had assured his father that he would follow that advice. Sure enough, Taylor did come down the stairs to find Gabe. He had a headache, and she made him some of Jeffy's special tea for pain and gave him a massage on his temples, brow, and neck. He complimented her on how much the massage helped, and she told him it was a massage her father had taught her when she'd been sick when she was younger. Once she finished easing his pain, they'd prayed together and snuggled up together, sleeping in each other's arms until dawn. The morning was a rush of activity to have morning prayer, eat breakfast, and get the girls to the Main Street Market by 8, with the makeup and clothing they'd been asked to bring along. Heather stayed with Lizzie to help with the twins and Iris. Nolan accompanied Keegan and Gabe to the chute to help watch over the girls. CJ also arrived at the chute to help watch over the girls. And with Ricky and Bree also there to help, Keegan only had 2 agents to take care of security. Mike Moreland stood in front of the market and stared south down Main Street. He smiled. These people knew how to go all Hallmark on their Christmas decorations. He'd been told the town would take care of things nicely, and boy, had they. Green pine garland and big red bows everywhere. Light posts were turned into candy canes. Beautiful wreaths hung in every store window. Christmas trees and lights everywhere. Little families of lighted deer spotted the edges of the sidewalks. Small potted Christmas trees were on either side of each storefront doorway. The dogwood trees and pear trees that would be in bloom in the spring were currently wrapped in tiny white lights. Strings of those same tiny lights on a wire frame arched over the street, making a tunnel of lights, and right in the center of each string of lights over the street was a large, beautiful golden bell tied with a large red bow. Also inside of the camera lens to the north of where he stood was the town gazebo, located in the little city park across from the post office. The gazebo was beautifully draped in Christmas garb. On the other side of the park was the Pine Forest Community Church, which had a nativity scene set up in the lawn, surrounded by Christmas trees and lights. He would try to keep that out of the shots. The Main Street Market was beside the city park, south of it, in what the locals called the old bank building, which had been owned by the Rutledge family, a fact he'd been told several times now. The building had been split into several storefronts: the Main Street Market, Bev's Books, Cindy's Bridal, and Pine Forest Floral. Next to the old bank building was a new modern bank that took up the large corner lot. Across the side street from the bank was Sunshine Daycare and Pine Forest First Baptist Church. Everything was dripping in every kind of Christmas decoration one could imagine. Mike smiled and nodded. It was perfect for the shoot, and he hadn't had to pay out anything. The mayor had been all too happy to know that his town would be part of a national ad campaign, even if the campaign was being run by a young company. Mike pasted a businesslike scowl on his face as he spotted the Tanner family headed up the sidewalk, carrying suit bags and such. Rose raised her chin as she approached. "Mike, good morning." He smiled warmly. "Rose, you look amazing as always." He nodded past her. Violet, right? Lily smiled. Good guess, but no. A woman stepped from behind Mike. Hello, everyone. I'm Dusty. I'm Mr. Moreland's assistant. Please come into the store. Mrs. Burton has allotted a room in the back as a dressing room. Rose's eyebrows shot up. Mike has an assistant now? She turned and smiled at him. You must be moving up in the world. You'll never know, he quipped. Rose rolled her eyes and headed inside, her sisters right behind her. Dusty smiled sweetly at the girls. The first shoot will be just outside this door. He wants you in the white outfits, but no hats yet. If you need anything, please let me know. Make sure you use the loose powder to take away the shine. She suddenly gasped. Oh no, what happened to your head? Daisy smiled. A bad guy broke in where I worked and bashed me in the head, she answered. She frowned. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I'd better go talk to Mike. Rose grinned. You do that. She left and Daisy giggled. She's a little high-strung, don't you think? A minute later, Bree and Taylor Kino were ushered into the room by a flustered Mrs. Burton. If I can get you anything, please let me know. Anything at all. She smiled and closed the door. Bree wrinkled her nose as she looked around. Okay, I guess we'll have to make do. Rose smiled. I guess this is not what you're used to. Yeah, not quite, Bree said with a smile. But we can make this work. Let's get ready. They started to undress when Mike came storming into the room, and the girls squealed as they covered themselves. Bree's eyebrows rose. Oh, sorry, ladies. I came because Dusty said one of you is injured. It's me, Daisy said. It's almost healed. He studied her head, then shook his. This is terrible. It won't work. Why didn't you tell me? Daisy shrugged. You didn't ask, and I thought it'd be healed well enough by now. Well, this is a breach of contract. Bree stepped forward. What are you going to do? Fire her? Nonsense. That can be covered with makeup, and you can make the camera shots from the good side of her face. Do you want to make this shoot a success or not? Are you looking for an out? Well, no, of course not, Mrs. Adams, and no disrespect to you at all, but she should have let me know. What would you have done? Bree countered. You need this campaign, and you need it now. Make it happen. Again, no disrespect, but say it like you mean it, she quipped. I'm acting as these girls' handler currently, and I have vast experience, and I'm telling you that if you and your one cameraman aren't professional enough to shoot around a small blemish on a girl's forehead, well, then you'd better rethink your profession. Well, I assure you our cameraman is very good at what he does. Oh, well, then it must be you who doubts that you can direct it properly? No, of course not. She smiled. Well, then, it's settled. You may leave, and you will only have your female assistant come into this room from here on out. You barge in here again like that, and I will not let it pass. Are we at an understanding? His eyes narrowed in anger. Yes, we are. Rose knew that look, and it didn't bode well. She hoped Mike didn't end up making a ridiculous scene. Mike sighed and checked his expensive watch. You have 45 minutes. Bree nodded. We won't need that long. Bye-bye. She closed the door and turned to smile at the girls. She pointed at her daughter. Tay, did you get that? She held up her phone. Yes, ma'am. Shoot that out to your father. I want him to see what we're dealing with today. Yes, ma'am, Taylor said. The Tanner girls giggled. Mrs. Kino, that was impressive, Rose said. I've never seen that side of you, Lily said softly. You've always seemed so quiet and sweet. Taylor snorted, but stopped when her mother glanced at her. I speak when I feel I need to speak, and I felt I need to just now. My dad says that's the reason he fell in love with her. She was strong enough to stand beside him, Taylor offered. Oh, I love that, Violet said. Mrs. Kino, I think I just fell in love with you too. Everyone giggled. Okay, ladies, get a move on. Don't make a liar out of me. And Daisy, when you're dressed, let me work on you. Daisy nodded. Yes, ma'am. New scene. Hours later, Bree stood next to Ricky, smiling as they watched 4 beautiful young ladies walk up the sidewalk. Lily was dressed in white knit slacks, a turtleneck sweater, a white beret on her head, and a white long wool coat. Daisy wore a straight white skirt, white boots, a white cashmere sweater, and a white cape, with a white cable knit hat on her head that perfectly covered the mark on her forehead. Rose wore white slacks, a white blouse, a white suit jacket, and a white scarf around her neck, and soft faux fur small brimmed hat. And Violet wore a long white cotton skirt with a lace overlay, with a long sleeved knit shirt paired with a white short waist jacket, white boots, and a lovely white felt bowler with a white flower on the front. They laughed and walked up the sidewalk and leaned into each other. One pointed at the shop window and they smiled prettily and turned slightly to look at the display, then back to look at each other. A cameraman and photographer were busy catching every second, every nuance. Ricky nodded in appreciation. Bree smiled at him. They could sell anything. I agree. First, their fresh, almost angelic beauty is breathtaking. Their complexions are flawless. They are naturals, Ricky said. Gabe nodded. I'm so used to seeing my sisters that I think I've taken how pretty they are for granted, but watching this has given me new appreciation for them. They are breathtaking, just like you say. And Mike is doing a good job in the direction, though I hate to say that, Bree added. Ricky and Gabe chuckled. Bree smiled. I think my favorite shots are the ones when all four girls are together, especially the ones doing the perfume misting when they were in the store. The way their eyes sparkled, the way the camera will catch the water particles in the air, the way they laughed and interacted with each other. It made me want to buy a bottle right there and then. Taylor looked up at her parents. They are awesome. I wish Heather and Miss Tanner could be here to see this. Bree looked at her daughter. Taylor, when you say things like that out of the blue, it makes me get all teary-eyed. Why? What did I say? Ricky nodded. Your mom means that when you show how you constantly think about others, it touches her heart and makes her remember just how special you are. You have a good heart, baby girl. We're proud of you. Taylor shrugged. I was just saying what popped into my head. I was also thinking about something else, Mom, that I want to talk to you about. What's that? When we were in there helping everyone get dressed, it made me think about a movie premiere, and then I thought about Eric's coming up. Oh, and you want a new dress? Bree said. Oh, no, it's not that. I was thinking that Jordan is going to be on Eric's arm, right? She's going to need a dress, right? Aw, honey, there you go again, Bree said with a sniff. Again, Ricky and Gabe chuckled. Well, what are we going to do? Taylor asked. I already set Jordan up with Maria. She's going to take care of her. Taylor smiled. Oh, I like Maria. Of all the stylists you've worked with, I like her the best. Me too. And she's not pushy, but she has a good eye. When are she and Jordan gonna get together? Taylor asked. Well, Jordan had an appointment to get her cast off today. She's gonna meet with Maria tomorrow after class at her salon. Taylor smiled up at her mother. Mom, it looks like you are the one thinking about others. Bree shrugged. Well, she's about to be my daughter-in-law. We take care of our own. She's about to be my sister-in-law, and I am so excited. I'm glad that Eric chose someone that I truly love. Ricky smiled. Bree shivered. Well, I think this shoot is about over, and I'm freezing. Let's go have a hot meal somewhere. Ricky put his arm around his wife and pulled her close. I can warm you up back at the house. Dad, I'm standing right here, Taylor quipped. Bree snuggled up against him. You are so warm. Why are men always so warm? Well, it's physiology. Men have more muscle mass, which generates heat. You know, higher metabolism, Ricky answered. Okay, Mike said, clapping his hands together. It's a wrap. The crowd standing around in the blocked-off street applauded. Some came forward to ask Ricky and Bree for autographs or selfies. They allowed it for a few minutes. The mayor stepped forward and spoke to Mike and then got his officers to clear the street so they could open up the road again. And in only a few minutes, Main Street was back to normal. Keegan called the group together. The Apples said to invite you all to the inn for a warm lunch. I'm in, Bree said quickly. Ricky frowned. She laughed and took his arm. We can go home after that and snuggle. He smiled. Snuggle? Okay, sounds good. Let's go eat. How are you feeling, Gabe? Taylor asked. I'm good. It's just a little cut. It's no big deal. Well, I guess after what you've been through this year, a cut is no big deal to you, but it could get infected. Well, Jeffy sent me some meds for that. Taylor blinked up at him. Gabe, she muttered as she put her cold hand on his face. I love you. He smiled. I love you too. What's up? She shrugged. The way this year's gone, doesn't it make you a little afraid of what else is coming at you? He shook his head. Nope. I trust Jesus. He's got me. I just got to stay in tune. He stood back suddenly, his face going pale, and he started breathing hard. What is it, Gabe? What's happening? She turned to get her father's attention. Dad! He turned immediately at the urgency in her voice, and she pointed at Gabe, and Ricky came to him immediately. Hey, son, what's going on? Gabe tried to catch his breath, and finally he did. He nodded at Ricky. Mr. Kino, he stopped and glanced at Taylor. Can I talk to you privately after lunch? Ricky nodded. Yes, we'll talk. You okay for now? Gabe drew a deep breath. Yes, sir. For now. Meanwhile, inside the Main Street Market, Lily was the last to gather her clothing and makeup bags. She took time to straighten up the room, throwing away some water bottles, pushing in the chairs around the dressing table. She looked up at the male voice. Well, hello there, Daisy. Lily frowned. Mike, she said, not bothering to correct him. You were really beautiful out there today. Thanks. I was thinking, even though you're a twin, you stand out above the others. There's just something about you. Really, she said with a soft laugh. I'm not kidding around. You're special. Lily sighed. What makes me special? He moved closer, and she backed up, wondering if she was going to have to put some of the things she'd learned in her martial arts classes into practice today. He moved closer again and reached out and touched her hair. Everything about you. Your hair is longer than your twin and much healthier looking. Your face is slimmer. He touched a finger to her cheek. Stop, she said quietly. Why? You draw me like a magnet. She snorted. Now that was a really cheesy line. He smiled and reached out to take hold of her upper arm. Come here. You have no idea who you're messing with, she said. Messing with? I'm not messing around. I'm serious. No, I mean literally. You have no idea who you're messing with. He pulled on her arm and she tried to pull away, but he held her fast. Michael Moreland, do not make me have to hurt you. Sorry, the computer jumped. Jumped a long way. Michael Moreland, do not make me have to hurt you. Hurt me? He shook his head and sighed. You Tanners are always threatening violence. He jerked her arm and pulled her close to him. Let go of my arm, or I'll make it so you can't do anything for a long time. He chuckled. Just let me show you how good I can be to you. Let go, or I'll show you how good I can be. He let go of her arm, but quickly put one arm around her waist and the other on her backside, and she immediately brought her knee up, and as he bent over in pain, she circled around and put him in a headlock. Squeezing hard, she allowed him to lift his head to see another twin standing there. Hi, Daisy, Lily said. You have a little problem there, Lily? Daisy asked. No problem at all, Lily said. Mike tried to loose Lily's arm, so she squeezed harder, but finally he succeeded in pulling her arm away, and he choked. You're Lily? She smiled. Yes. I'm so special you didn't even know who I was, and guess what? You're lucky. Lucky? Yes, came a male voice from behind Daisy, because if I'd been the one to pull your hands off my daughter, you'd be unconscious right now and on the way to a hospital. Mike, I've tried to tell you to stop all of this. I've tried to tell you that you're going to cross a line and ruin the business you've been building. Well, no more warnings. You're done. He smiled at his daughter. Well done, Lily. I'm thinking you and Daisy and Rose and Vi should do an interview about ethics in business and mention what occurred in your dealings with Mr. Moreland's agency. Oh, Daddy, that would ruin him. Yes, it would, but you might be saving another young lady from having to deal with his advances. The next girl might be younger, more innocent, and less able to take care of herself. Lily nodded. You're right, Dad. Too bad Mike didn't learn his lesson when you told him to stop. Mike cleared his throat as he nodded his head. Okay, you win. Sorry, Daisy. I mean Lily. I think it's too late for that, Daisy said. You're done, Mike. Done. It's a shame, Keegan went on, because you're a talented young man. You could have done a lot of good to help small companies get going. Brilliant concept, but you got seduced by the dark side. Sex, money, and power don't mean anything. They are nothing but a lure and can't be your priority or focus. Well, can you give me another chance? Keegan looked at his daughters and shook his head. You've had several chances. I think the problem is you've never had to face any consequences. You have to pay in some way. I can't let you go scot-free. You have to learn that you must take responsibility for your actions. I didn't do anything that bad. You put your hands on my daughter. On my daughters, he said, emphasizing the plural. Women are not objects for you to handle. They're not here on the earth for your pleasure or your amusement. They are human beings, partners in life. The human race cannot live without them, and they should be treated with respect and care. They should be protected. Going back to the example I once used with you, how would you feel if a man put his hands on your mother? How would you feel if your mother asked a man to let go of her and he treated her the way you just treated Lily? Imagine it for a moment. Envision it. He stood silently, actually thinking about how it would make him feel, and he nodded. I'd want to kill him. Keegan smiled. See? That's why Lily said you were lucky, because you're not dead, Keegan sighed. I think you've been a little adverse to trying to understand what we've tried to teach you, because your ego was bruised. You're used to being in charge. You were in charge of your mother as you were growing up your whole life, and then you came into our world, the Tanner world, which is very different from the liberal state you grew up in, and your ego is hurt. You discovered that you're not the strongest. You're not the smartest. You're not the biggest or the best looking or the richest. You came here and quickly discovered those things. Here in rural Georgia, we hold people much more accountable for their actions. We have moral laws that we are proud to keep. We are strong. We have ethics. I allowed you into our lives because we thought you too had ethics. You've shown that you don't understand the meaning of that word, so you have to learn for your own good and for the good of those around you. What are you saying? Mike asked. I'm saying there will be consequences for your actions. We could go legal, but I think we'll go civil. A lawsuit, maybe. Our goal is not to destroy you completely, but make you responsible and accountable for your actions. And I think money is important to you, so we'll hurt you there. You'll have a lot less of it for a while, and you might lose some business, but if you work hard and make amends, you'll recover eventually. This is ridiculous, he said, glancing at the two girls in the room. Keegan shook his head. You're embarrassed. You should be. The only way to fix things is to humble yourself and admit your mistakes and vow to change your ways. That's really the only way you can come out of this setback. Until then, I guess we'll see you in court. I have a good lawyer, Mike retorted. So do I. Ranked best in the nation. Good luck. Mike Moreland turned and stormed from the room, and Lily sighed, and Daisy shook her head. Do you think he'll ever change? Keegan frowned. It's hard to say. But we need to pray for him. Pray that God will touch his heart and help him to see the light. It's going to be hard to pray for him, Daisy said. Keegan nodded and pulled out his phone. Let's look at the scripture real quick. It's one of my favorites. He found what he was looking for and smiled as he read. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. He scrolled back up. And here's the beginning of that lesson. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. And Keegan looked up at his two daughters, and they both were smiling. I love you, Daddy, Lily said. Me too, Daisy said. Keegan smiled. And I love you. Let's go eat some lunch, and then I have to go to work. New scene. It is December 4th, Wednesday afternoon, Pine Forest Inn, Pine Forest, Georgia. Everyone sat around the table complaining about the lunch. Everyone meaning the Tanners, the Apples, the Stewarts, the Kinos, and two guests of the inn. Complaining meaning the food was too good, too filling, and they'd all eaten too much. The guests were immensely pleased that they decided on an early Christmas vacation at the inn. They had no idea at the booking that two of the biggest movie stars in the nation would be sitting at a table eating lunch with them. They tried not to stare, but were immensely relieved when Bree struck up a conversation with them and they could look into her beautiful face as they spoke. She asked the normal questions like, where are they from? Any children? Any other family? About their jobs? About how they usually celebrate Christmas? And what brings them to Pine Forest? Ricky listened in, doing what his father would do, silently praying to ask how he and his wife can be in service to these people and what God needed him to do. His wife was already doing what she needed to do, get information. He discovered as he listened that the couple was in their 40s. They were childless. They were wealthy. They live in Boston. One of them, the husband, grew up in Colorado, and the wife grew up in South Carolina in a small town on the border of Georgia. They had heard about the inn and decided to come for Christmas. They decided they didn't have anything else to do, and the woman wanted to remember Christmas, how she'd celebrated as a kid. Ricky got a nudging and asked a question. So, you said you have no children? The woman shook her head. Sadly, no. So that wasn't a choice? Bree asked, then quickly added, oh, that might be too personal of a question. I am so sorry. No, it's okay, the woman said. We tried, but I had a lot of health problems and ended up having to have a hysterectomy. They watched as her husband reached over and patted her hand. The woman smiled and shrugged. And now we're in our 40s and it's really too late. Ricky shook his head. It's never too late. I mean, you could adopt. The man shook his head. I'm 43. My wife is 41. Bree smiled and looked over at Lisa Stewart, who'd been listening. Lisa just gave birth to twins, and I'm 46. And my husband is 49, Lisa added. You're kidding. You look so young, the woman said. Thanks, Lisa replied. It's the good, clean country air. Lots of hard work and living Jeffy's protocols. We have lots of energy and stamina. What is Jeffy's protocols? The man asked. Jeffy is my sister, Ricky put in. Dr. Juneflower Keno Wallace. Oh, well, yes, of course we've heard of her. We've been meaning to look into her books or go to one of her clinics, but we just never seem to have time. Well, her books are very easy to read and very helpful, Bree said. I would make time if I were you, Ricky said, to either read the books or to go to one of her clinics for an evaluation. The man laughed. Drumming up business for your sister, huh? Ricky smiled, but then became serious. Well, she has no need for us to drum up business for her. She's not interested in making money. She was willing to risk her life to bring her protocols to light and end disease in this world, and she came close to death several times. It's her calling. Oh, I was just joking around. Ricky nodded. Oh, I know. I just had to make sure that there was no misunderstanding. We're only here to help. So let us know if you need any information. He frowned. If you were to adopt a child, would you want a baby or would you be interested in adopting an older child? Well, to be honest, a toddler and up would probably be best for us, the woman said. Ricky nodded. That's great. A friend of ours has a few agencies who handles adoptions, and I know they have a whole lot of children who need homes. Their agencies are nationwide. Would you like the number? Yes, I would, the woman said. Ricky nodded at Bree. Do you have one of Angel's cards? Bree smiled. I do. She pulled her purse off the back of her chair, dug out the card, and handed it to the woman. Just tell them you met us in Pine Forest and you're interested in adoption, and they'll take it from there. Will do, the man said as his wife handed him the card and he looked it over. The woman smiled. So, will you be here for Christmas? No, Ricky said. We're headed back to Cali on Saturday morning. Aw, that's a shame. Bree smiled sweetly. Well, the Apples and Stewarts who run the inn here, they are very good friends of our family, and they'll take very good care of you. We love coming here. It feels like home. But we probably won't stay here at the inn any longer because we just bought a home in the area. Oh, how nice, Ricky nodded. We love Pine Forest and all the people here. They are family to us. I have a feeling you'll feel the same way. He looked up as someone laid a hand on his shoulder. Hello there, Gabe. Grandmaster Kino, do you have a moment to talk? Ricky nodded and smiled at Gabe's use of a formal greeting. He was showing respect in front of strangers. Yes, he stood. I'm sorry to have to leave, but I promised this young man that I would have a conversation with him. Gabe nodded at the people and introduced himself and mentioned that his family lived right next door to the inn and that his sister was one of the chefs that worked at the inn. After handshakes and pleasantries, Ricky kissed his wife's cheek, bid farewell to the new acquaintances, and went to John's office to speak with Gabe. Ricky took a seat in the chair behind the desk, and Gabe sat down in front of the desk, sighing heavily as he did. Ricky smiled. Would your father like to join us? He had to go back to work. Okay, then. Ricky looked Gabe over. I take it that you don't particularly want to have this conversation? Well, it's not that I don't want to talk to you, Mr. Kino. It's just what I have to say isn't fun. He drew a deep breath. Look, I know I'm not special like Jeffy. I know that. But for some reason this year, I've started having these visions. And they've actually been pretty accurate. I had the first one in the stable, where I saw and felt myself in pain, remember, on an old dirty wooden floor, and shortly after that, that's exactly where I was. Then I saw Taylor hurt on the beach, shortly after someone tried to take her. And I had a dream about Grandmaster Kino, that something was wrong with his... Something was wrong with his heart, and shortly after that, he was shot in the chest. And, well, he died, I guess. Ricky nodded, urging him to go on. I've had several others, some just a hint that something is wrong, and others that haven't happened yet. Still, I'm telling you all this to remind you that I've been fairly accurate. I don't know why God is giving me these visions. It's not like I'm a prophet. But today, Taylor and I were talking about all the things that have happened to me, he said as he touched the cut on his forehead. She asked me if I'm afraid of what will happen next. Ricky nodded again. And are you? No, sir. I told Taylor I wasn't afraid because I trust Jesus and I know he's got me. But the very moment I said that, I had a strong thought and vision come into my head. The thought was that because I was protected, then the dark forces will try to get those I love in order to get to me. Ricky sighed and nodded. Mm-hmm. Gabe went on. And the vision, he trailed off. I don't know if I can even bring myself to say it. Must have been pretty bad, Ricky said, trying to get it out of him. Gabe nodded. Yes, sir. It was about Taylor. And he shook his head. It'll be easier if you just get it out. Go ahead, rip off the Band-Aid. I saw a fist, a large fist, a man's fist, and I saw it punch her in the face. And then the scene flashed to her laying on the street, very still, her eyes open, her hair all fanned out around her head. She wasn't breathing. She wasn't moving. It looked like she was... He shook his head and looked down. I can't even say it. Looking back up, his eyes met Ricky's. Mr. Kino, you know I love Taylor. I love her more than my own life. One day after she graduates from high school, I was going to ask you for her hand in marriage. I was going to make a family with her. We would have been so good together. I was going to work very hard to provide her with a good life. You say all that like it's in the past. Because maybe it is. You mean because of the vision? Well, the vision really shook me up. If Taylor's in danger because she's associated with me, then maybe I should end it with her. You mean like break up with her in order to protect her? Yes, sir. Okay, well, your thinking is a little skewed. Do you mind if I set you straight on a few things? Well, no, of course not. That's why I wanted to speak with you. Good. And let me just say that after I tell you my opinion, I want you to do two things. I want you to discuss what we've talked about here with your father, with your parents, and then I want you to pray about it and get clarity. Gabe nodded. Yes, sir, I will. Ricky nodded and smiled. First, Gabe, let me just say that my father thinks you are a special young man and a fine young man, and I totally agree with him. So much so that if the time is right when you come to me and ask for Taylor in marriage, I will happily bless that union. Gabe sighed. Gabe, Jeffy, and my father both have visions. They have discovered that sometimes those visions are for road signs, meaning just signs to let you know you're on the right path. Sometimes those visions are to prepare you for something big that's coming. And sometimes they are so that you can actually prevent what's coming. You have to learn to discern what it is God is asking of you. So pray and talk to Him and fast and pray some more. Do that until you have an answer. For now, I can tell you that I take your visions very seriously, and I will take steps to make sure Taylor is protected. Ricky smiled to comfort Gabe, who was looking very troubled. Gabe, you are a bright light, yes. So is Taylor. Gabe nodded. Absolutely. That's why I love her so much. So, even if you weren't in her life, she's still going to be a target. Maybe the forces of evil are gearing up here in these last days and will be coming hard at her and at you. But you can't bow to them. You know that. I know you know that. You do not let them dictate who you can be with or not be with. You are the powerful ones, not them. And Gabe, each day you get stronger. If God has brought these two powerful lights together, do we refuse that because we're afraid? Gabe shook his head. I'm just trying to protect her. Well, go about it a different way. Be strong together. Pray for daily protection. Read the Word. Put on the armor of God. He will lead you and protect you both. Trust Him. He brought you and Taylor together. You don't throw that away. And I just have to say that if you broke up with Taylor, if you put her away from you, you would crush her. She trusts you. You have to trust her too. You have to trust that she will stand by your side through it all, that she wants to stand by your side through any and all trials. She's strong, Gabe, and she's getting stronger. She's had some battles with fear, but she's overcoming that. He nodded. But I don't want her to die. Well, I don't either. And we're going to do everything we can to prevent that. But what we're not going to do is kowtow to the darkness. That's probably exactly what they're trying to do, make you afraid so that you two won't come together and be the brightest light of all. Don't give them what they want. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that God brought you two together? Gabe smiled. I believe you brought us together the day you asked me to teach her to shoot. Ricky chuckled. Fair enough. But I did that because God put it in my mind to nudge her toward you. As soon as you began to speak to her, as soon as I saw her reaction to you, I knew it was meant to be. Did you not think so? Did you not feel it? Gabe nodded. Teaching her that day, it was like we suddenly became aware of each other. Well, I mean, I've always been aware of her. She was Ricky Kino's very beautiful daughter, but she was way out of my league and off limits. Ricky smiled. She is beautiful and pure and special, and you are worthy of her and in the same league. It's been very easy to see that God has brought two very special young people together. So we don't throw that away because we're afraid. You told Taylor you're not afraid for yourself. You trust God. Well, trust her too, because she's not afraid either. Not anymore, and together we'll protect her with God's help. Gabe sighed and nodded. Okay, we'll protect her together. He shrugged. I guess I feel a lot better now than I did 15 minutes ago. Ricky smiled. Good. Bree and I are in this together. Your dad and mom are in this together. You and Taylor are in this together. At least so far you are. I don't want to assume. Gabe smiled. Well, you can assume. Unless she finds someone else, I intend to marry her. We'll take it a day at a time, Ricky urged. Let's head back out. You only have until Friday night before you have to say goodbye for a while. Gabe frowned. Yes. And it's always a hard thing to do, saying goodbye to Taylor. Ricky chuckled. Oh, I'm sure. New scene. It is still December 4th at 7:30 p.m. Wednesday evening at the Stewart home, Pine Forest, Georgia. Excuse me. Bree stood swaying back and forth, cooing at little Lachlan Stewart, the youngest member of the Stewart family, who was now 1 month and 4 days old. She had a head full of dark hair, and everyone was joking about that because Lisa and her other two daughters, Lena and Erilyn, all had red hair, and Chaz and his two sons had darkish blonde hair. Well, Lisa said, I've seen pictures of my grandfather Lawrence, and he was young and his hair was dark. Gabe nodded. Yeah, it was. Everyone stopped and stared. Gabe's face reddened and he quickly looked down. I'm sorry. That's okay, Gabe, Lisa said quickly. It just took us a minute to remember that you encountered Grams and my grandfather in your little trip to the other side. I think it's very cool. He nodded. Thanks, he mumbled. And my mother also had dark hair, Joe said quickly. Everyone smiled. Well then, little Lucky Lou, Bree purred at the baby, using the nickname her father Chaz called her. I guess that makes you legit and very special. The baby yawned. Ricky smiled as he bounced Lachlan's twin brother Jonathan in his arms and spoke to him using his nickname too. Okay, Johnny Fun. You're special too, big guy, because you're the only male redhead in the family. Well, I mean in the immediate family, he corrected when Joe cleared his throat. Well, are we going to play with babies all night, or are we going to get these trees decorated? 14-year-old Charlie Stewart asked. Gabe laughed. You just want to hurry up so we can get to the dessert. Charlie shrugged. Yeah, and I know you know that because you're thinking the same thing. Gabe nodded and grinned. Chaz nodded at Charlie. Well, you boys help me get this last tree in the house and into the stand, and us guys get the lights on. Yes, sir, Charlie and Matt said. Ricky passed the baby he was holding off to Taylor. Here, honey, take this big guy and I'll help the men get the trees prepped. Taylor gently took the baby and began cooing at him. She looked up across the room at Gabe and he smiled at her. She knew that he knew she was thinking about one day having her own baby in her arms. Keegan placed his arm around Gabe's shoulder. Beautiful sight, huh? Gabe nodded. It's pretty cool. Maybe one day she'll be holding your own child. Gabe sighed. Hopefully. Is there even a question? Gabe looked up at his father. Well, sure. She still has to graduate from high school. She might want to go to college. She might meet someone else. I mean, I'm really her first real boyfriend. Okay, well, I guess that's you trying to think responsibly, and I get that. But don't be so noble that you lose her. Gabe blew out a breath. Losing her is my biggest fear. Keegan's brow furrowed. Dad, can we have a talk a little later tonight? I think that might be a good idea. Chaz Stewart came in holding the trunk of a large pine tree already in its stand, while Charlie held the top. They placed the tree in the middle of the large den. A minute later, Ricky and Matt came in with the second tree, and behind them came John Apple carrying the third tree. John set the tree down, circled it, nodded it. Okay, my part is done. I have to head back to the inn because our manager's daughter is singing at the high school Christmas concert, but Jody gets to stay here and represent. Jody put her arm around Milena. You mean Lena and I get to stay here and represent? John smiled. Well, if you mean to represent the apples, that's correct, but I meant to represent the inn. Milena didn't smile. She'd been hard to cheer up lately. She hadn't heard from Jake, and she was worried sick. She'd been trying to be present in the moment and put her heart into helping her family and friends. She'd focused so hard on the feeding of the 5,000, but now that it was over and Christmas was coming in 3 weeks, she really needed to hear from Jake. Even if it was only a word from his commanding officer saying that he was okay and just very busy. Her father had told her that no news is good news, and she clung to that now, drew a deep breath, and helped the women sort out all the decorations for the trees. Meanwhile, the guys all quickly put the lights on the 3 Christmas trees. One tree had all white lights, one tree had all blue lights, and one tree had multicolored lights. The tree with white lights would grace the Stewart's den. The tree with the blue lights would be in the formal front living room where they would leave the table lamps turned off. Because when Charlie had been 3 years old, they'd had blue lights on their only Christmas tree, and he'd said it looked like starlight at night when baby Jesus was born, and since then they kept a second tree with blue lights in the living room. The third tree would stand in the middle of the side yard, where they had a large fire pit, and where they had guests from the inn come over for s'mores and hot chocolate and Christmas carols and entertainment provided by what they call the church kids. The church kids were a group of teenagers who loved to sing together, and always at least one or more of them could play the guitar and accompany everyone. The Stewarts, Tanners, and Apples children had been part of the church kids. Violet had been one of the guitar players, and traditionally, Lizzie and her girls had always gifted the guests with "O Holy Night." Lily and Daisy came in from the kitchen with 2 giant bowls filled with popcorn, and the decorating of trees commenced. Christmas music floated softly over the large group of people as they concentrated on making the trees perfectly decorated in a very imperfect sort of way. There was usually some banter between Rose and her sisters, or Rose and Lena, but Rose was notably absent. Right after the delicious lunch at the inn, she'd packed up some food and headed to the hospital to be with Jericho. It was Gabe who spoke what everyone was thinking. "Wow, without Rose, everyone is so quiet," Gabe said. "I am not quiet," Iris demanded. "I am thinking." "Oh, you're thinking, are you?" Gabe teased, making everyone laugh. "Yes, and Erwin is helping me." 7-year-old Erlyn smiled at Iris. "Which do you want to put there, the gold candy cane or the clear icicle?" I think I want the icicle." Erlyn held it out to her to put on the tree and helped her get it hooked onto the branch. Violet nodded at Gabe. "You're right, though, Gabe. Rose definitely adds spice to any undertaking." Ricky and Bree smiled at each other. In the Kino home at their parents' house, it was Bree and Ricky who'd argued and teased and made things interesting. "Well, Gabe, as long as I can remember," Daisy began, "you were the one who really got everything going. And I'm about to do it again because this song is fun to dance to." He grabbed Taylor's hand and began swing dancing to a remixed high-tempo version of Jingle Bell Rock. Everyone stood back and watched as the dance, which started out silly, became a really good version of a swing dance with lifts and spins, and Taylor squealed as Gabe lifted her high in the air and she tried to point her toes and look graceful, which she accomplished to perfection. Everyone laughed and applauded. "I want to dance," Erlyn announced. Gabe immediately left Taylor and went to dance with Erlyn, so Taylor immediately went to Charlie and held out her hands. "Come on, Charlie, dance with me." I don't dance too well." Taylor laughed. "Well, you will by the time I get finished with you." Red-faced Charlie Stewart followed Taylor's instructions as she showed him where to put his hands, and then counted 1, 2, 3 to show him the rhythm of the swing step. The music ended, and she asked them to replay the song, and after a few times through, Charlie and Taylor were doing a fine job of dancing the swing. They all applauded. Then 12-year-old Matt Stewart was brought out to dance with Erlyn so that Gabe could switch partners and dance with little Iris, who was demanding to be danced with. Daisy and Lily smiled at each other. Once again, their brother had made things interesting. The doorbell rang, and Charlie rushed to open it. "Hey, Lucas." "Hey, Mrs. Murphy." "Hey, Dalton. Y'all come in. Everyone's back in the den." They all went to the den, and Rebecca immediately apologized. "Hello, Lisa. I'm so sorry we're late. I had some last-minute things to take care of at the center." "It's okay. We're just getting started." Chaz stepped forward and shook Dalton's hand. "Glad you could make it. Come on in. There's popcorn and cider for now. Big desserts coming later." Dalton nodded. "Looking forward to it." He turned and went to shake his boss's hand. "Director Tanner, it's good to see you." Keegan smiled. "We're off the clock, Dalton. Just call me Keegan. I've told you that 1,000 times." "I know, sir, but I find it difficult to do that, so just allow me to show my respect." Keegan chuckled. "Whatever makes you feel comfortable." Gabe smiled at the conversation. He was glad other people had so much respect for his dad. It made him feel proud. He looked around. The entire, very large room was filled with trees and decorations and people that he loved. His heart felt so full. Someone's phone started ringing. It was Milena, who pulled her phone from her hip pocket. She looked at it and let out a shriek, and everyone quieted as she answered the video call. "Jake?" "Yes, baby, it's me." A soft reply. Milena looked up with a huge smile. "It's Jake, everyone. It's Jake," she said again, literally jumping up and down like a little girl. She spoke into the phone. "Jake, everyone is here decorating our trees." She held her phone out at each person in the room, and they all waved and yelled greetings to the young man who was on the other side of the world. Finally, she got to Jody. "Hello, my boy," his mother said happily. "Hey, Mom. You okay?" "I am now. I love you, sweetheart. I'm so happy to see your face." "I love you too, Mom. Is Dad there?" "No, he had to watch things at the inn." "Okay, I'll try to call him later." Jody nodded, her brow furrowing. Something wasn't quite right. Elena finally put her own face back in front of the phone. Oh, Jake, I miss you so much. I miss you too, Bugs. So much, he said softly. Lena, can you go upstairs so we can talk privately? Yes, hold on. She turned to the crowd. I'm going to go upstairs for a private conversation. She dashed out of the room and up the stairs to her bedroom, and once up there, she transferred the call over to her tablet so she could see him better. Oh, Jake, it's so good to see your face. He nodded. And seeing your face is a sight for sore eyes for sure. Elena looked closer at the screen. Where are you? I mean, I know I'm not supposed to ask, but usually I see a yellow wall behind you and that wall looks white. Jake looked behind him. Usually you see a wooden wall, and this wall is not white, it's light green. Oh, okay. So where are you? He sighed. I'm in Germany. What? Why? When? Her voice became more agitated with each question. He sighed. Okay, so stay calm, okay? Okay. She drew a deep breath. I'm in a hospital in Germany, LRMC, that's the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. Elena's eyes filled with tears immediately. She sniffed. Why? What happened? How badly are you hurt? Not too badly. I still have both arms and legs. Lena, on a mission outside of Jalalabad, I was... He stopped to draw a breath. I was taken. She gasped. Oh, no, Jake. I'm okay, baby. Me and another guy, Nick, we were both taken. Our unit was helping out a family of 5 out of the country. Everything went sideways. We got them on a chopper, but we couldn't get on ourselves. The bird had to lift and hightail it, and we were overtaken by some very bad guys. They were really mad at us because we took out about 20 of their guys before we ran out of ammo. We were taken back to their hideout. How long? How long were you there? Because you just called me on my birthday. Well, we left for the mission that night. It took 3 days to locate the family. It took 2 days to evacuate. And I can't go into detail. They took Nick and I on Thanksgiving. We were held almost 5 days. 5 really horrible days. Our guys found us and we were flown to Germany after we were stabilized, and we arrived here yesterday. Elena sniffed back her tears. Jake, I am so sorry. How bad are your injuries? He nodded. I have some internal injuries from being beaten and stomped on. I broke a finger and I injured 2 others. She gasped. Dear Jesus, please, she murmured. Oh, he was right there with me, Jake assured her. He was with you, but he didn't help you? He did help me, Bugs. Don't lose faith, babe. I'm alive. They were going to behead us on video for all the world to see. I was in so much pain, I almost welcomed it. The only thing that made me not give up was the thought of getting back to you. I prayed hard, and Jesus filled me with peace and with comfort, and I felt strongly that we were going to be found, and we were, miraculously. One of the women here is secretly a Christian. She told me that Jesus spoke to her several months ago, and she knows he's real. She told me she heard me praying, and she told me that she was going to get word to our guys, and she did, Lena. That's the only reason I'm not dead. It was Jesus. He helped me. So don't lose faith, baby. Be grateful. Lena nodded. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to doubt. But it's so hard to see you suffer. Jake smiled. I'm not suffering anymore. I feel really good compared to how I felt 48 hours ago. Does this mean you're coming home? Lena asked hopefully. Jake frowned. I'm not hurt badly enough to come home. I'll be here another week or so, and then I'm being shipped back to my unit. She wiped at the tears pouring down her face. I'm looking at your face, Jake. It doesn't look bad. I mean, I see a few scratches, nothing big. He sighed. Yeah, there were more interested in other parts of my body, like my back. It'll never look the same again. But until the resurrection, he said with a chuckle. Not until the resurrection, he said with a chuckle. Why are you laughing? She said through her tears. It's not funny. He shrugged. Because I'm actually happy. I'm alive, and I'm talking to my wife. And 2 days ago, I thought I'd never see you again. It's simply a matter of perspective. She sniffed. I just want to put my arms around you and hold you. Ditto, he said softly. He smiled at his beautiful, very young wife. You know what you can do for me that will bring me great comfort? No, what? Tell me, I'll do anything for you. You can talk to me about all the stuff going on there at home. I want to know it all, like, what are your plans for Christmas? Anything different than usual? She nodded. Oh, yes, because there didn't used to be a Gabe Tanner community center, but now there is, and there's so much going on. It's really like having a multi-denominational Christian church to run, and Rose is doing such a good job. Let me tell you all about what took place on Thanksgiving, and then I'll tell you all about what's happened for Christmas, what's planned for Christmas. Jake nodded with a grin. Tell me everything. That is the end of chapter 25.